Okay, so this video is going to go over how to solve simultaneous equations. This is something that's covered in the appendix to chapter 1. It's also a type of a question you're going to have. There's a question similar to this on homework assignment number 1. So this will help you with that. So it's an example of something from the appendix to chapter 1. And in particular, this is going to be a supply and demand model. So I have an actual equation here for a demand curve, an actual equation for a supply curve. These are both lines. Graphically, it's something like this. And so maybe in principles, you'd have like a supply curve and demand curve. And graphically, then we would say, like, oh, the intersection of supply and demand is the equilibrium. And that's the price at which the quantity demand equals the quantity supplied. That's what we refer to as the market clearing. And so that would be the equilibrium. Well, we can also do this graphically, not just graphically. We can also do this algebraically to get a numerical solution. And one reason to do this would be it's just another way of testing or checking to see that you understand exactly what we mean by equilibrium. It's a solution to this system of simultaneous equations. It's the price and quantity for which both the demand curve and the supply curve will hold. And that's literally finding the intersection of these two lines in a graph like this. So how we do this? Well, it's just some simple algebra. So it's algebra that you would have learned a long time ago, but it's worth revisiting this and studying something like this. It helps with your basic math literacy. And so, math and finance majors are known to be math literate, and part of that is because we make you do stuff like solve something like this. So how would we do this? Well, one way is you could solve for Q or P in one of these equations, then substitute into the other. Well, the way we have the demand and supply curves written here, we have Q on the left-hand side, and then an expression with P on the right-hand side. So in this case, the easiest thing to do would simply be, well, the equilibrium or the intersection, these Q's have to be the same. So you can take this and set it equal to that. And so this is what we have here. And all you have to do is simply solve for P in this in this expression here. You'd have this, if you simplify the first line, and then that would give you, divide each side by 20, that's going to give you that P is 40. That's going to be the equilibrium price. That would be the price at which the quantity supplied is going to equal the quantity demand. Again, when we introduce the model of supply and demand, that's how we described or defined the equilibrium, the price at which this market clears, the quantity supplied equals the quantity demand. So we have that. What we can do next then is, well, we have to find the quantity. You can take this 40 and plug it into either the demand curve or the supply curve. In fact, you can plug it into each. You should get the same answer both ways. That's a way to sort of test your whether you got the correct answer. So you take this 40 and plug it in. I'll plug it into the demand curve. And if you simplify that out there, just a little bit of math, you might need to use a calculator. It'd end up being 300. And if you plug that 40 into here, you should get 300 as well. Again, that'd be a way to check to make sure you have the answer. So 40 and 300 would be the only values of P and Q at which the demand equation and the supply equation are both satisfied. We've really found the intersection between the supply curve and the demand curve. Now, there's one thing we can do in a homework problem. In Principles of Economics, we introduced the idea of price controls. These would be a legal maximum price in the case of a price ceiling, or a legal minimum price in the case of a price floor. We'd say, like, nobody, if we had a price ceiling in this market, what we'd be saying is make it illegal for anybody to sell more than the price ceiling price. So suppose we had a price ceiling in here at $30. And then what I typically would do is, if I give you a price ceiling or a price floor, I'd say, oh, find the quantity demanded and the quantity supplied, and then the amount of the surplus or shortage. So to figure out the quantity demanded, you take this $30 and plug it into the demand curve, and that's going to give you the quantity demanded. And again, a little bit of calculator math here gives you a quantity demanded of 400, and the quantity supplied will be 200. So the quantity demanded is not equal to the quantity supplied. So in a sense, so you're seeing what we see graphically here. If you had a price that's not the right price, when you plug that price into the demand curve and the supply curve, you're not going to get the same answer. So the market's not clearing at a price of $30. If the market were free to adjust, well, there would be upward pressure on the price, we'd say, and the price would adjust up to $40. But with a price ceiling in place here, we'd be saying like, oh, that's not going to be allowed to happen. The market's not going to be allowed to clear. And then if you want to know, in this case, when quantity demanded is greater than quantity supplied, that, if you remember, is what we'll call a shortage. And that's what we have here. And then to find the amount of the shortage, it's simply take the difference here, QD minus QS. And so that would give you an answer of 200. So this was solving a system of simultaneous equations. It's in the appendix to chapter 1. It's also the kind of, we do this in this, one of the applications in economics would be simply to find the equilibrium of the model of supply and demand.